For some reason, it just makes me think of like space and stuff.
Resume recording. Okay. So I didn't record everything I just said, but I'll record from here on out. Okay. Thanks, guys. So this painting, in a nutshell, combines flatness of space, collapse of space, blurring of the figure-ground relationship, introduces masks as elements which draw from non-Western art. It is a really weird painting and unlike anything that had been done before it. And Picasso is of course, working on this as a mental process for over a year. He works on this, and there are lots of studies and sketches and notes about it. It is called the key to Cubism and to a lot of modern painting because of everything that comes after it. So the elements are here. The foundation is laid for what we think of today as Cubism. Cubism is an attempt to show all sides of an object in two dimensions. So with Cubist painting, there's the realization that the camera can do what the painting used to do, which is to show, outside life, to show a picture of someone and basically what they look like. What a camera cannot do is show that life is three-dimensional. So painting has to reinvent itself in relation to the camera, right, among other things. So if I take a picture of you, it is from one fixed point of view, right? And that assumes that one eye of the camera is taking in reality. But reality is three-dimensional, right? You can walk all the way around it. Take a photograph and you have one fixed point of view, but you've got stereoscopic vision. If you close one eye and then the other, things shift slightly, right? Because your point of view is changing. So Cubism acknowledges that as convincing as it is, photography is limited in its ability to show reality. And painting can, in some way, maybe push past those limitations. Also, painting is free to explore abstraction, absolutely, by this point. It's kind of worked its way up to not being beholden to showing pictures that look like this new thing called photograph. So, George Braque is a painter working in Paris. All the kind of experimental painters at the time are working in Paris, or at least most of them, to generalize. And he and Picasso are neighbors. They're literally working around the corner from each other. And they discover they're kind of on this same sort of track. They both saw the Paul Cézanne retrospective, in which his paintings were all laid out in chronological order, and you could see his thought processes. That increasingly, there is a collapse of space with his landscapes. There is an emphasizing of the flatness of the canvas itself. He plays with the value of color, with using purples in shadows, borrowed from the Impressionist, with using yellows in the highlights, that sort of thing. So color value becomes important for Cézanne. Picasso and Braque are both really, really influenced as young artists by that Cézanne show, and also by African masks. So Braque, he is definitely the co-inventor of Cubism, and this is a Braque painting. All we really teach or learn about Braque today is that. I mean, he's a great painter in his own right, co-inventor of Cubism, very, very influential. It's Picasso and Braque, and it's unclear as to exactly who does what during this time period because they work so closely together. Picasso is more of a household name than George Braque because he revolutionizes art making about 5 times for himself and for everybody else. So he has a long career, both before and definitely after Cubism. Braque's influence kind of begins and ends during this time period. So this is Braque, and notice that they have removed color. This is an example of analytic Cubism. So there is an attempt to show all sides of an object. Color might be distracting at this point. So like a scientist with a control, they take color away. They just paint with tan, and that's pretty much it, right? Tan and black and white. So you can see all these lines, these cubes, these kind of broken chunks and planes of shape. There is a bit of text. There is A sound hole here with some strings. This is a guitar player. And maybe you can make out multiple noses, multiple eyes, that sort of thing, as if you were walking around the thing and doing a quick geometric sketch again and again and again and layering it on top. So you can make out the abstracted form of someone, but it's not really meant to look like that person. It's not based on a visual reality so much as a conceptual reality. So this is Braque, and Braque is a very influential painter. Picasso is arguably the more talented of the two. He has a knack for making pictures, really like nobody else in his generation. So there's a difference in their images. This is, sometimes it's hard to tell them apart though. This is analytic cubism, and these are Picasso paintings. At least the one on the left for sure is. I'm not sure about the one on the right. When it loads. Not that one. We'll get to that later. This is Woman Playing a Mandolin, and it's Picasso. You can make out that it's a female playing a stringed instrument, but everything is broken into, kind of different shapes, spheres and cubes and cylinders and that sort of thing. So this is analyzing cubism, taking away color because that might be distracting. Remember, Picasso went through the blue period, the rose period. He's already explored the expressive aspects of color, and that's not what he's interested in at the moment. And you can make out here a guitar or a stringed instrument. They are sticking to subject matter that does not matter so much because they're not painting about an important event. They're painting about painting itself. They are reinventing what a picture is, what a painting is. The same thing for landscape. This looks a little bit like some of the Cezanne houses in the valley between he and the mountain when he is painting the same mountain again and again and again. So greatly influenced by that. That is analytical cubism. And they're analyzing what this new thing of cubism is, taking away color. Eventually, they are tired of waiting on the paint to dry because they are painters. They're using oil paint, which has been the default since around 1400. That is what painters use. So oil paint takes weeks to dry, and it takes them a long time to sit around and work on these images and wait on them to get where they need to be. So one of them, and it's unclear which, either Picasso or Braque, it may have been Braque, decides to glue a border around one of his canvases. It's a border of rope, and he is attaching or assembling something onto his canvas, and then immediately it springs from there, that you don't really have to use just paint. So synthetic cubism or collage is a new art form created through cubism. And it's true, and it's pointed out often today, that there were Victorian ladies making very creative collaged postcards and things like that, almost like scrapbooking, for decades before this. And a lot of those are very interesting. In an art context, Picasso goes down as kind of the innovator of collage because his stuff is fine art related, gallery related, and of course he's more well known. So to put a fine point on it, the technique had been there before. Picasso is the first established artist to grab it and use it and kind of make that something that other artists used. So again, it's not so much the invention, but the innovation that makes things go, just like Edison. So this is entitled Bottle of Suze. That is a wine label that says Suze that has been glued onto the surface. This is a cone-shaped bottle of wine. There's the top of the cork. There's the side of the cork. You're seeing this from kind of a three-quarter view looking down. This is the top of an oval or round table. So you're looking down on top of that. This is a disjointed wine glass. There is kind of the flute or the container part of the glass. There's a bit of the opening. This is also maybe the same glass seen from above. This is the stem of the glass. Maybe it has a little bit of a curlicue at the bottom. This is one table leg defined with cream colored paint and negative space. This is possibly the other table leg or a bit of other furniture or architecture. So you've got multiple points of view, collapse of space, And of course, this is just newspaper, wallpaper, scrap paper, a little bit of paint, and then drawing over the top and gluing things down. So collage as an art form comes out of cubism, and this is called synthetic cubism because it's the synthetic version of a cubist experiment. So what they're really doing is trying to burn through their ideas without having to wait for the paint to dry. Other artists immediately take this and run with it, and collage becomes a minor offshoot of painting that's still very much used today. Similarly, and you can tell they've got a lot of the wallpaper and a lot of the blue paper lying around. They use newspaper headlines. This is painted on wood grain, sound hole, one kind of paper, blue paper, sheet music, a bit of a drawing. And this is, of course, a guitar. So they're still mining this same sort of territory. It's not that the guitar is so important, it's that the form is what they're exploring, and this gives them a quick, easy means to explore that. So all of modernism with a capital M is about form. It's about the way the thing looks, the way that it functions, not so much what is it a painting of. That is very much secondary to the visual stuff and the structure of the painting itself. And then Picasso, so all this is around 1909, 10, 11, 12, a period of a few years. Picasso takes it a bit further. He lifts one of his collages, so to speak, off the wall and extends it out into space. So this is sheet metal, string, and wire, and it, of course, is a guitar. That is a tin can for the sound hole, strings stretched through it. He pokes some holes in, wrap the strings around, and it is a cubist collage that comes off the wall. So it is assemblage. Because they're working in France, we would say assemblage, but there you go. So that is guitar, which is the first constructed sculpture in art history as far as we know. Most sculpture tends to be constructed today, just made out of different parts. Prior to this time, or around this time, sculpture was either carved out of a block of something, it was cast in a mold into bronze, or modeled out of clay. But the idea for a constructed sculpture comes from Picasso. And this is his violin from the same year, much more abstracted. And of course, he's got that classic blue and brown color palette in black and white that he is so fond of. So this looks, I mean, to me, as much like piano keys as anything else, but it's a violin for Picasso. He's always a painter, but he's really innovative in terms of sculpture. He creates the first constructed sculptures, which are really just relief versions of synthetic cubism. He also is a great ceramics artist, that sort of thing, when he's not doing paintings, but that's another story. Long career for Picasso. So it doesn't end with Picasso and Braque. A generation of other artists latch on to these innovative ideas and just run with them absolutely. There are a lot of Cubist artists, but these are the originators. And then this is kind of skipping around within the chapter, but putting things in an order that chronologically makes sense. There's German Expressionism, which is a totally different sort of impulse. So you can look at German paintings from the Renaissance, and they're incredibly expressive. There seems to be that sensibility within the culture for a long time. This is Paula Modersohn-Becker's self-portrait, and she is a female painter, and this is significant because she is showing herself essentially in the way that she wants to be seen. She does this for herself. She is a painter who now has the benefit or not of working in a time in which artists are kind of free agents. So this is a self-portrait from the female point of view. It is emphasizing fertility. It's not the first image of female fertility in art history. certainly, but this is one created by the artist about herself. So her point of view becomes important in images like this. The background is abstracted. The figure is just in front of the background. There's no Renaissance perspective. There's no deep space. The body is not with a deep, naturalistic, illusionistic sense of chiaroscuro, but is much more like the way that Edouard Manet painted, in which there are big chunks or planes of color. And this is not the idealized kind of grand odalisque of On. This is kind of straightforward looking in the mirror and painting from the artist herself. So you have the female nude from the female point of view. Same thing here. And she didn't only do self-portraits, but this is even more abstracted. The colors are more bold. The flowers in the background are definitely just paint on the canvas. There's little attempt to make it look like anything other than a painting on canvas. Notice how the hand is almost like a lobster claw, and that is fine, and it fits in with the rest of the picture because she doesn't feel the need to work on it for a long time to get a sense of naturalism. It's not about that. It is about color. It's about self-expression. The flowers echo body parts. All of this kind of blends together physically. So this is a painting about painting. First and foremost, it's about color. It's about brushstroke. It's about showing herself, presenting herself in a way that is related to nature, free agent, free agency with work like this. She's a great example of German Expressionism. Also, there are a lot of little art movements. The Bruch or the Bridge is one, and Kirchner is a member of that. He's also a German Expressionist. This is City Street, Dresden, and it's from what, 1917, I believe. Oh, 1908, sorry. This is an image of kind of the rising nationalism that's going on during this time period. That is a emerging thing in Europe. And notice that the colors are garish. This lady's face is green with red, lifting a bit of a petticoat there, which would have been scandalous or at least risque back in the day. The streets are pink and green. This greatly departs from traditional color palettes and traditional light to emphasize kind of discomfort. It is meant to show a sense of anxiety. And there was a sense of anxiety welling up in Europe, in Germany around this time. He is sort of capturing the times with his artwork. So it is meant to be a very kind of weird, off-putting painting, and the expressive aspects of the color are what make that work. Then there is Emil Noldy's Dance Around the Golden Calf. And this goes all the way back to the Old Testament. When Moses comes down the mountain with the Ten Commandments, his people have melted their gold into a golden calf, honoring the god Baal, and they're dancing around. And of course, he breaks the Ten Commandments and has to go get another pair. So notice the colors here. The dancers are warm colors. They are yellows and oranges and kind of reddish purples. The shadows are cool blues. He is really playing with warm and cool colors, with the fevered energy of the dancers, all of that. So this is German Expressionism. It is not in any way trying to look like a photograph, but it's showing everything that a photograph cannot do. And then there is the Blue Rider group. And Vasily Kandinsky is a Russian painter who is originally painting kind of like Van Gogh. There are a lot of Van Gogh paintings from the waterside that look pretty much like this. This is an expressive use of color. It's post-impressionistic. This is from 1898. It's in keeping with that time period. So when he is learning to paint, people like Claude Monet, Edouard Manet, Vincent van Gogh are painters that he has heard of, and he is painting loosely in that style. He goes on to do very much his own thing. This is his painting, The Blue Rider. and he has a few Blue Rider paintings. This was an art group that wanted to promote the expressive nature of art, and they kind of latched onto a bit of writing. I don't remember if it's poetry or literature about a Blue Rider on a horse. And this shows that it is really about form, it's about abstraction, it's about brushstroke. That's one Blue Rider painting. I'll show you a couple more. This is by Franz Marc, Blue Horse, who is also in the Blue Rider group. Blue horses, Blue Riders, that is their thing. Also delving into abstraction, influenced by Cubism, just a bit here. And this is Large Blue Horses, which is there also by Marc. So you can see the influence of Cubism, abstraction, Henri Matisse, all of that kind of working here. Those new styles that emerge in Paris and then scattering to other places become influential for all these artists. And then Kandinsky, right, from the Blue Rider group, which is why they're even mentioned, is the author of a book called Concerning the Spiritual in Art. It's not a big book. It's pretty thin, and it's a pretty good read, even today. It's from 1912, and he believes that colors have a spiritual quality, that sounds can be associated with particular colors. He is a synesthete, and that is where you have a kind of cross-wiring of the senses. So you might smell something and see a particular color that goes along with it. In the same way that some people see auras around other people, that sort of thing. It's a real thing. It is just a cross-wiring of the senses. So there were composers during his time period that had light shows that went along with their music, because that particular composer, Scriabin is the one I'm thinking of, was a synesthete as well. So when he heard tones, he saw colors. Kandinsky writes a book about art and spirituality. He thinks that art should use an abstract vocabulary like music does. So his paintings, really from around 1912 or so, are very, very different. They depart from the Blue Rider. This is his sketch one for Composition 7 from 1913. And it is the first example, or Kandinsky's work is, of totally non-objective art, meaning there are no objects there. So it's just lines, shapes, colors, the way that they intersect and connect with each other, play off of each other. There is no subject matter at all, right? You can look and you can try to find something recognizable, but it's not intentionally there. So this is total abstraction, and that has been on the table since about 1912. So Kandinsky argues, that art can be like music. If you have a symphony or an orchestra, you've got a timpani drum and harpsichord and French horns and violins, and they don't try to imitate the song of a bird. They don't try to imitate the sound of the human voice. They do their own thing, and then collectively you get something new from that. He says that art can be exactly the same. You don't need to have pictures of things. That's what a camera is for. So absolutely groundbreaking sort of work that comes from Kandinsky, and that's why he is so well known today. And to be fair, looking back through history and revising, there were other people who had similar ideas. He's just the guy who is the most well-known, kind of has the biggest splash with his innovations. It's an idea that's kind of in the air, right? But he's the guy that grabs it and runs with it. And then Kazimir Malevich and Suprematism. He's a Russian painter. So these art movements are beginning to echo and travel very, very quickly. He's a Russian painter, and he comes up with something called suprematism, which is the supremacy of pure feeling in art. And a lot of these artists are kind of influenced by Gauguin and his idea that color could be expressive in a non-traditional way. Suprematism takes it way further, and this is 8 red rectangles. So he borrows from the idea of cubism and absolutely takes it to a different place. This is his own creation, and you just have 8 rectangles floating on a field of white placed on the diagonal. That is it. He has paintings that are just of black squares, and the painting itself becomes more like an object. It is not about a picture of anything other than just these are red rectangles on a white field. So that is the supremacy of feeling, of emotion in painting, as kind of put out there by Malevich. So his artwork has a lot of influence on other artists in just seeing what is possible. And then there's Austrian Expressionism, because these painters are Austrian and not German, they're their neighbors. Slightly different feel. This is Kokoschka. I'm sorry, that's Paul Klee. Let me pull up Kokoschka. Close enough. Okay. So Kokoschka's paintings at times just look like kind of really brushstrokey post-impressionism. This is self-portrait as a degenerate artist, emphasizing color and brushstroke, looseness. This is Bride of the Wind, and you have a couple reclining in some sort of desert plain surrounded by the wind itself. Kokoschka's paintings are thoroughly expressive in his application of paint, and you can see that it's very, very loose. And then, oh, there's Bride of the Wind. That's the one I was looking for. You can see the brush strokes. You can see the skin tones are bluish, almost as if they have deceased. And then Egon Schiele is an artist that most art students discover at some point. He has a great deal of expression in the way that he draws himself. He does a lot of self-portraits. He draws his girlfriend a lot. He has a relatively short life, but really, really expressive work, and he is an Austrian expressionist. So this is charcoal and watercolor ink washes. It's all kind of free-flowing, abstracting at will. All this is on the table during this time period. And then we will get as far as Futurism and through Duchamp. In Italy, there is Futurism. And Futurism is a full-fledged movement where some of these other things have been much smaller. Futurism has a manifesto, as a lot of movements from this time period did. They believed in the positive effects of industrialization. They include support for World War I. They thought it will be a cleansing and will end war forever. Of course, they were very, very wrong about that. From their manifesto, they are for violence, energy, and boldness, free from the tyranny of harmony and good taste. And one term that really resonates with the futurists is dynamism, which is dynamic sensation or kind of more faster now. They would be, if they were alive today, would be very pro-technology, pro-cutting-edge industrialization, mechanization, that sort of thing. Robots are the future. That is kind of the camp they would be in. So their artwork kind of reflects these things. This is Unique Forms of Continuity in Space. And with the title, I mean, it is that. They're continuous forms, they're unique, they're in space. It kind of looks to me like a figure striding forward, big leg muscles, little sort of tracers or flames of motion behind them, almost like he has a helmet like a conquistador, and of course he's covered in armor. So, I mean, that's what I'm taking from it. It clearly looks to be kind of a humanoid figure from the time of Rodin. You can get a walking man with just a torso. So this is kind of drawing from Cubism. It is fragmented. It is mechanical looking. This is a good example of futurism. You sort of have this machine man striding forward to conquer. This is Balla's Streetlight, Giacomo Balla. This looks like late Impressionism, but it's not the light that is actually being shown, because this is not the way light works. It's little boomerang shapes of energy emanating from this thing. You've got the moon in the background, but the light's not coming from the moon. It's coming from this new electric light. So this is from 1909, a painting about energy itself. You get lots of paintings of bicycle wheels in motion, of people running with legs in motion as if they are repeated images again and again and again. That is also indebted to photography, the new field of motion pictures that is emerging. It is more faster now as far as technology goes. That is what they're for. And then Marcel Duchamp. So Duchamp is the most influential artist for the second half of the 20th century up through today. Picasso, probably the most influential artist from 1907 or so up to World War II. After World War II, Duchamp's influence becomes to be felt more and more. Really, into the 1960s or so is when he really gets the shot in the arm. But Picasso, as an artist, is relatively old-fashioned compared to Duchamp. Picasso's innovations are of form. Duchamp's are innovations of concept and idea. And he is the father of conceptual art as we think of it today. So he comes from a family of painters. This is his Nude Descending a Staircase from 1912. And this is Nude Descending a Staircase #2. He is a fan of multiples. He is an artist who questions the idea of originality and authenticity, which is a conceptual thing to do. You probably can't find the nude here, right? Because it's not a real flesh nude. It is kind of a man machine. Imagine C3PO or something along those lines. You can probably make out the staircase that is there. You can make out the swoosh marks that are there, dashed lines, curved lines that look like the flow of energy. And it looks like you have this robotic machine walking down a set of stairs. So this was submitted to art show, the Armory Show of 1913. Duchamp's two older brothers, who were well-known painters, were on the jurying committee for the art show. He still has a hard time with it because what he's doing is so different from what everybody else is doing. One critic calls this an explosion in a shingle factory. He didn't think it looked like much of anything at all. Of course, what he is doing is taking that fragmentation that is found in Cubism, that distortion, that use of multiple points of view within the same image, and he is adding to that the illusion of time and motion, because for motion to happen, you have the passage of time. So Cubism is the hot new art of the day in 1912. This is taking that a step further, adding the element of motion to it. So it's kind of like combining Cubism and some of the impulses of Futurism. So, and this is oil on canvas, traditional painting in form, but the look of it is very, very different. And let me show you, I linked this to the Wikipedia page because it's kind of instructional for this. This is early photography of a man walking. This is an attempt by an early photographer to show the way the body moves. And all these little dots are bright points of light that have been kind of attached to the body, reflectors that show through repeated stills again and again the way the structure of the body moves, right? So kind of a piece of reflective tape or light down here, and that is what picks up the motion of the form of the body. So these sorts of experiments are around. They are known. That is what he is kind of working from. There's a literal nude descending a staircase by Edward Muybridge, who is the inventor of motion pictures, Woman Walking Downstairs from 1887. These are the still photos from that series. So this idea is not a new idea. He is just taking what is there and making something different from it. This is a parody of that painting, right? When people actually used to go to see paintings as a culture, as a group, and then respond to them. And this is from The Evening Sun, The Rush Descending a Staircase, Rush Hour in the Subway. So it was regularly lampooned, and that is another story there. So Duchamp is not coming from nowhere, but his artwork is first and foremost idea-based. And the way that that is put out into the world is secondary. Then there's his bicycle wheel from 1913. And I've got the date here of 13 to 51 because he reworks it again in 1951. So you get both dates. This is simply a bicycle wheel stuck into a stool. It is assemblage, but it is also a ready-made. And a ready-made is a piece of art that is already made. It is a term coined by Marcel Duchamp. He invents it, it's his baby. And anytime anybody makes a ready-made today, which he recommends other artists do, they are borrowing from the ideas of Duchamp, which he encourages. So he says you should only make a ready-made a few times a year so that you don't wear the thing out. But the idea is that the idea is the important thing. With conceptual art, it's not so much based on what it looks like. It's not about the form, which is what Picasso was all about exploring. It is about the concept. The dominant organ in the body is the brain. And if you don't stimulate the brain, you're not doing much. I mean, the brain tells your eyes what you're seeing. So you might be excited by line and shape and color and form and all of that, but it's really the brain that's doing the activity. And he wants to make artwork that makes you think rather than just gives you visual pleasure or looks good above your couch. So this had been sitting in his studio for a while before he decided to exhibit it. He probably liked to watch the wheel spin and like the patterns and shadows that it made. There was a Duchamp work at the High Museum several years ago. They had 20 modern masters, and a lot of the artists we are looking at in this section were shown in that show. So the work that he had then in that show was it's like kaleidoscope patterns almost, very much related to something like this spinning around but with color. So that is part of his interest for sure. This is actually a ready-made with assist because he had to put these two elements together. He had to drill a hole, he had to insert the bicycle spoke of the fork here so that he could spin the wheel. I mean, you might say it looks like a Ferris wheel, but not really. So this is a new thing. It is not visual art. It is conceptual art first and foremost. And the idea that it is from 1913 and 1951, because he made another one later, that is a very Duchampian thing. He has zero problem making another one. So he likes the idea of multiples. He questions the idea of authorship, of originality. He questions the very foundations of the expectations of visual art. And more Duchamp to come. This is just early Duchamp. Then this shows you the work of his brother from 1914, The Great Horse. It's a Cubist sculpture. This is by Raymond Duchamp-Villon, older brother of Marcel Duchamp. And it's a horse, kind of. You get horse from here. It's also like the engine or the piston arm of a steam locomotive. So it is an iron horse. It is very much in keeping with the art of his day. So Duchamp's ideas are not so far out there compared to everybody else's. They're just a little too much for a lot of the critics of his time period, especially his conceptual stuff. But Nude Descending a Staircase, not that far removed from this by his brother. And then we'll get down through Brancusi. Gallery 291 is an important place because it is a gallery run by Alfred Stieglitz, photographer that we talked about last time. And he invites European artists to show in his gallery. It's the first American art gallery that invites European painters and sculptors to show their work. And modern work, the new stuff. He pairs them with American artists who are interested in the same sort of ideas. So he forces this connection between Americans and European modernists, which is very fruitful ground for American painters anyway, and opens up a new audience for the Europeans. So that is Gallery 291, and a lot of important shows happened there. Then there's the Armory Show of 1913, which is where Nude Descending a Staircase was originally shown. They have a lot of French modernism there, and that is in New York. So The new ideas of Picasso and Duchamp and all of these other Parisian artists are brought to the American attention at the Armory Show of 1913. And then finally for today, Constantin Brancusi. He is a Romanian painter, sculptor who is working in Paris. He says they're idiots who define my work as abstract, yet what they call abstract is what is most realistic. What is real is not the appearance, but the idea, the essence of things. So appearances can be deceiving, appearances are skin deep, the essence of things is what Brancusi is trying to get to. So in that show at the High Museum of 20 Modern Masters, there was one sculptor, and that was Brancusi. Everybody else was a painter, or like Duchamp, kind of a conceptual artist who goes in different directions. Brancusi was the only sculptor. Like Rodin before him, he kind of drags sculpture kicking and screaming to somewhere else. Rodin lays the foundation for modern sculpture. Constantin Brancusi is the sleek, stylized, absolutely abstract modern sculptor. And this is The Kiss from 1907. Not given a date, you might think this was 20,000 years old. And he has a version that's a little more squared off, a little less rounded too. It looks like two people in a warm embrace. When you see it from straight on, it's so abstract that it also almost could be a cyclops with his hair parted down the middle and big lips. He wants to make something that is timeless, is eternal, is the essence of whatever he's trying to depict. So this is a kiss, it is love, it is human connection, human relationships. This goes back as old as people. So he means for this to not be tied to a particular time and place, but to a concept and to an idea. And that is in some way indebted to Duchamp, although Brancusi is all about form. This is The Newborn from 1915. And Brancusi begins as a traditional sculptor. And he knows how to sculpt something and make it look real. These are variations on The Newborn. This one is in bronze. This one is in marble. He says, let the stone be stone, let the wood be wood, let the bronze be bronze. You're released from those materials, their innate capabilities. So he plays with these traditional materials of marble, of bronze, occasionally of wood or of different types of stone, to find out how that material can make the thing different. So this is Sleeping Muse. This is The Newborn here. Kind of an egg-like head. It is a head shape, clearly with eyes and nose and mouth, but also very much an egg. And another version here with the same title, and he has abstracted it further, and you have a little bit of flat plane for what might be a face, not quite an egg, not quite a head. Somewhere in between, it is suggestive of that thing. So that is Brancusi's tack with sculpture. This is Princess X, which created a minor scandal. It was criticized as being phallic. It is meant to be a portrait of an actual individual. This is the head. This is an elongated neck. This is the chest. It is a sculpture of a particular female. And I can show you the work that it came from originally. And you can see here, like the relationship between this sculpture, a little more traditional. There's a long neck, there's the head, there is a bit of hair. Same thing here, right? That's what he's going for. There's Brancusi. This is from the angle that it's often photographed at, maybe suggestive of something he did not intend. This is the sculpture that it began as, and this is a marble version, woman looking in a mirror. It is of that same particular person. And you have the long neck, it is turned, she is craning to see herself in the mirror, there's the nose, all of that. This is more naturalistic. By the time you get to this, totally abstracted, it is meant to be the essence of female, or this particular female to Brancusi. He also, maybe subconsciously takes it to somewhere else, which other people certainly pick up on. So Brancusi is all about abstraction, all about getting down to the essence of things. And lastly, for him, bird in space. So this sculpture is about 6 feet tall. It's as big as a person. It is, in this case, sleek polished bronze. He has a marble version that is somewhat different, but mostly the same. And it does not look like a bird, maybe a little bit like a feather, but think of it as the essence of flight. So birds fly, they defy gravity. You could lay this down, and that would show you kind of the way that birds tend to fly, not straight up, but maybe across the sky. But then it might just look like motion itself. So this is the defiance of gravity. It seems to be the lifting up as if this part is just separating from the earth. It's kind of like a rocket ship, which did not exist yet. So this is, for Brancusi, the essence of what a bird does, which is to defy gravity, to fly, bird in space. And you can see he kind of plays with the stands, the bases for these. That is a sculptural thing. He also often makes them out of different materials too. This is the essence of abstraction for Brancusi, and this is kind of his signature piece. It also changes the definition of sculpture legally. There is a show in which this work is to be shown. He ships it to that art show. When it goes through customs in the United States, they say that's not a sculpture, because a sculpture is like a person or a thing. A sculpture of an individual, a human, a dog, a cat, a tree, something like that. That's a sculpture. They don't know what this is, but clearly not a sculpture to customs. And they write it down as a machine part, because that's what it looks like to them. A big 6 foot tall, sleek, gleaming machine part. He goes to court because they tax it. The customs rate is at a higher rate for machine part than it is for sculpture. So they're trying to charge him a higher rate, claiming that it's not art. He takes it to court. He eventually wins, and the legal definition of sculpture is changed to include new abstract works that might not bear much visual relationship to something you've seen before. So legally, the definition of sculpture has changed because of this work. And it is kind of the essence of Brancusi. As I'm scrolling down, you can see that he has variations that are kind of nuances on the same theme. That is bird in space, and kind of a good place to stop for this chapter. And we will have test 3 over 17 and 18 on Thursday. That is that. Any questions on any of this? All right. So for your test, we'll log in, kind of meet as usual. Yeah, so no class on Thursday, really. I'm just gonna kind of put it there, and I mean, I'll be here. You don't necessarily have to. There's no lecture on Thursday, so we'll have the test available. You can kind of sign in for Zoom if you'd like, but I'm just going to be telling you, here's the test, showing you where it is, and then saying, feel free to take it at any time today or the next day. So that is that. So if you just want to look for it on Thursday morning, that's fine. If you want to log into Zoom, I'll kind of show you where it is on D2L, and that's fine too. I'll be here. But that's that. Yeah, so no lecture on Thursday. Okay. And that is it. Let me make sure before you all go that I've got everybody's name written down. Okay, and now I do. Okay, then I've got everybody's name down. Class dismissed. See you Thursday.